Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass. So after a week away with coronavirus, I'm back with another lesson, and this week we're going to look at a quick, simple etude in a minor key that can help with focusing on several aspects of your technique. The line is taken from the upcoming Technique Builder course over at Talkingbass that features a set of technique lessons followed by coaching through 60 etudes just like this one that work on specific melodic movements and the technical hurdles that they present. As always, the tab and sheet music is all there over at talkingbass.net. Just click that link in the info below. Also, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Then sign up to the Talkingbass website for free to gain access to the members area, where you'll find a ton of practice resources and downloads, as well as the forums, groups, and other social networking features where you can mix with over 100,000 other bass players, all walking the same bass path as you. So I'll demonstrate the etude in the key of F minor, and it sounds like this. So first let's just work through the notes in this etude, and then we'll look at some of the technical hurdles. So like I said, we're in the key of F minor, which in terms of a key signature is going to be A flat major. So we start at the F here at the 8th fret of the A string, and we work up through what's essentially an F minor add 9 arpeggio. So we just come up and down through that. Okay, so that's F, G, A flat, C, and then F, G, A flat, and then back down through those notes. So that's 8th fret, 10th fret, 11th fret on the A string, 10th fret on the D string, and then 10th, 12th, and 13th fret on the G string. So up, through those notes, and back down. Now, before we move into the next line, it's worth mentioning that we're actually working through a small chord progression here of F minor, C7, and back to F minor. So it's a 1-5-1 chord progression in the key of F minor. So there we have the F minor chord, and then we've got this little connecting line of 11th, 9th, and 7th frets on the E string, leading us into that C at the 8th fret of the E string. So next, we're at the C7 chord, where we basically work up through a C7 flat 9 arpeggio. So we've got C, E, G, B flat, basic C7, but then we've got the D flat there, bringing us back to the C, the root note. So 8th fret E string, and then 7th fret, 10th fret on the A string, 8th fret on the D string, and then the 6th fret on the G string. And then we're back to the C at the 10th fret of the D string. Okay, so. As you could hear there, we next play the B natural at the 9th fret of the D string, leading back to the C. And this begins this descending line of. Okay, so each time we're leading back in to the C at the 10th fret of the D string. So we have the B to C, B flat to C, A flat to C, G to C, and then finally we have this E and the C down at the bottom. So we've got 9th fret to 10th fret D string, then the 8th fret to the 10th fret D string, then we're on the 11th fret of the A string, back up to the C, and then 10th fret of the A string, back up to the C, and then finally we've got the 7th fret of the A string and the 8th fret on the E string for the E and the C. So, and then we're back to the F at the 8th fret of the A string, and that we're back at the start. So very slowly, all of that together. Now, from a technical standpoint, we do need to focus on both the fretting hand and the picking hand, although, as you'll probably notice fairly quickly, it's the picking hand that's most likely to get you finger twisted. So it's worth learning the line in small phrases or chunks that you can then break down in isolation and then build upon slowly. As one tip before we start, with this or any other line that you learn, I'd always recommend finding a finger picking pattern that works and then sticking to it. Don't just rely on an automatic, intuitive approach every time that you play, because if you change it up, raking here one time, raking there another, you'll be effectively learning a different piece from a physical perspective. Instead, you want consistency in both hands, playing the same thing every time that you come to practice. That way you're practicing the same movements. So let's look at the first phrase in here, which is basically that F minor add 9 arpeggio. So in terms of the fretting hand, I'm coming up with a 1 finger per fret span here of first finger, third finger, fourth finger, and then I shift with the first finger, the index finger, and joint bar across the D and the G strings. Just shifting the point of pressure there as I move from the D string to the G string. So this gives you a little bit of practice at that joint barring, and then it's first finger, third finger, fourth finger up on the top. Then we come down through those same fingers until we get down to the A flat, where I'm playing with the second finger, first finger for the A flat and the G, and then I'm coming down with the first finger to the F. In terms of the picking hand, I'm starting with the second finger, the middle finger, and it's alternate picking all the way up until we get back down to the C, down to the A flat, where I'm raking with the index finger with that first finger. So that's the D string to the A string. Rake there and then alternate, okay? It's always worth considering these rakes as little waypoints. So when you're learning a piece like this, you can use alternate picking as a kind of default go-to picking pattern, and then every time you're going to be raking, see that as a little waypoint, thinking, okay, rake there, rake there. Once we reach the F and we move down onto the E string, I'm going to be raking again with that index finger. So we've then got 1, 2, 1 for the connecting line. So when we land on the C at the 8th fret of the E string, I'm on the second finger. So worth taking that really, really slowly, just building this up and paying special attention to which finger you're using on which note. Next we have the ascending arpeggio, and I'm fretting this just as I would any dominant 7 arpeggio, starting on the second finger of the fretting hand, working up second, first, fourth, second, and then I'm using the first finger for that D flat up there on the G string. So you've got to micro shift down slightly, possibly to get that if you can't stretch. And in the picking hand, obviously I'm starting on the second finger and just alternating all the way up. Then we're back down onto the C, okay? And I'm fretting that with the fourth finger. Like I said, you can take any of these small chunks of the line and then just practice them in isolation, and it gives you a little bit of practice at, you know, those particular movements. So that you can take a small chunk like that and then just move it through the keys if you need to. Next, let's add that little neighbour note of that B natural there. So for the fretting hand there, I'm using the second finger rather than the third finger. And again, I'm just alternate picking all the way through. And when we finish on that C, I'm picking with the first finger. So there's our little waypoint. So we know that when we come down this descending line, we know that we're starting with the second finger when we get to the B flat. Next, with the descent, I'm going to be using the first finger and third finger for the B flat to the C. Then I'm going to be using the fourth finger to the third finger for the A flat back to the C. And then I'm going to be using the second finger to the third finger for the G to the C. So again, you can practice that move in isolation. And in terms of the picking hand, like I said, we're on the second finger there, we're starting, but then we rake down when we come to the A flat. Rake, rake. That way, as we're coming down through these notes, it's all first finger, second finger, which is a bit easier on the hands because it's always tougher to move across, in a sense, across the strings with the first finger, let's say. It's much easier if you're playing first finger, second finger, first finger, second finger. You just have to think of what it's like to play an octave. You know, if you were to start on the second finger, it's a lot easier when you're actually using the longer finger moving that way across the strings. Then finally, for the E down to the C, I'm using the first finger and second finger in the fretting hand, and I'm raking with the first finger. So, and then that leads us back into the F, and I'm back on the second finger just as we began. So if we put all of that together slowly, we have And you can take that round and round if you want. Now, if you've never tried anything like this, this might seem like an overly analytical way at looking at both hands. You know, thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be on the second finger on this one, I'm going to be on the first finger on this one. But, you know, on really difficult pieces, you know, like if you're learning like a bark piece, let's say, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to be looking at. If you're just playing, it doesn't really matter, you know, very simple bass lines. But on more tricky lines, it really pays to know at least what your starting finger is going to be and which finger you're going to be on in the picking hand, especially when you get to certain waypoints, you know, and paying attention to where you're going to rick, where you're going to be coming back on maybe an odd finger, all of that stuff. You don't have to memorize every single note, you know, you don't work through going first finger, you know, second finger, picking hand, first finger, that hand, then this, you know, matching them up like that. Not at all, you don't need to do that. You just need to know at least where you're going to start, whether you're going to be using alternate picking, where you're going to rake, etc. As a technical tip when you're learning these kind of lines, try to stay relaxed in both hands. Now, I talk about this a lot in the Technique Builder course, and that's, you know, that's a deep dive into every aspect of your technique. But when you're learning something like this, be sure to keep the thumb in the back of the neck and keep those fingers relaxed. So it should be almost effortless in this hand, and don't worry about stretching or anything like that. Just use slight micro shifting in the hand to allow you to move up through those notes. Okay, so like I said, very light in this hand, very light in that hand, you know, as light as possible. Don't worry about straining, and especially when you're building speed. When you're building speed, it's important to be as relaxed as possible. Once you have the whole line under your fingers, I'd recommend sticking with that key and building your fluency in one position. Don't worry about metronomes or even playing the line in strict time. As you start to learn the line, there'll be a period of uncertainty, and that's going to be the same no matter what lines you learn. Just learn it in your own time. Once you feel confident with the fingering in both hands, you can then try forcing a more strict rhythm feel, you know, of straight 16th notes that might sound more like this. But there's no harm in playing with a more expressive, more wavering tempo, more like this. Then, once you feel confident, you can try moving the etude through every key. Each key is going to present its own feel and technical hurdles as you move up and down the fretboard. So start in F minor and then move through the cycle of fifths. Now I say cycle of fifths rather than fourths because minor keys are more suited to the sharp keys than they are flat keys. So we work through in the order F, C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, and then we're back to E sharp, which is F. So if we move to C minor, we're going to move down to this third fret on the A string, and we have. So obviously a lot more stretching there. You've got to use a lot more micro shifts. So it's, you know, just wider between the frets than it is up here in F. Don't rush to move through the keys. Stay with a single key until you feel totally confident with the notes. Also, for those of you that can read music, I'd recommend writing out the etude on manuscript paper in each key. Don't use key signatures though. Write out every sharp and flat as needed. This forces you into acknowledging each note of the line in the new key rather than writing out the same pattern and then allowing the key signature to do all the work. Okay, so that's a brief minor etude that should help with several aspects of your technique. Remember, the lesson material is all there over at Talkingbass. Just click the link in the info below. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel and sign up to the Talkingbass network and membership to gain access to a massive community of like-minded bass players and a ton of bass practice resources and downloads. Okay, I'll see you next week.